Welcome to the JCPS MTSS training on the Formative Assessment Toolkit with a focus on the high yield practice, more informative and graded assessment. I am Dominique Dobson-Pinn, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher with the AIS Zone, working with elementary schools.
I am April Bemker, MTSS Engagement Resource Teacher, also working with the AIS Zone with middle and high schools. Please take a moment to type the case-sensitive bit.ly into your browser. This will allow you access to this presentation and all the resources included for future reference. Here you will see the 6 components that make up the MTSS department or multi-tiered systems of support. MTSS focuses on overall school improvement by aligning resources and support for both teachers and students. We provide multiple levels of support for learners that address academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and produce professional development that is aligned with schools and the district as a whole. Let me start by showing you the components of our department, multi-tiered systems of support, also known as MTSS. The MTSS academic department provides teachers with Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions and academic support. This department is headed by Donna Lawson. The MTSS behavior department, led by Sandra Hensel, supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks, including PBIS and restorative practices. The MTSS re-engagement department supports students who are transitioning back to their home schools from Minor Daniels Academy and Breckenridge Metropolitan. The goal of our department, MTSS engagement, is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. Both the MTSS engagement and re-engagement departments are led by Dr. Naomi Brahim. The point of contact for each department is located in the concept map. Here are the 6 MTSS toolkits. By clicking on the toolkit image, you will access the MTSS department webpage and each toolkit. Now let's look at the definition for formative assessment before we discuss our high yield practice. Formative assessment is an ongoing process focused on learning goals where both students and teachers take stock of student work using formal and informal processes. We will be looking at using formal processes in this training. The key to the formative assessment process is that both teachers and students take action to move students closer to their learning goals by adjusting instruction and learning methods. Successful implementation of this high-yield practice is when a teacher evaluates student learning using a system that includes informative and graded assessments to efficiently monitor student progress towards standards mastery. Using more informative and graded assessments provides teachers with data about patterns in the student's learning. These types of assessments are not limited to chapter, unit, and/or benchmark tests. Performance-based assessments, such as projects, presentations, and portfolios, are another way to evaluate a student's mastery of content. In today's session, we will develop a deeper understanding of more informative and graded assessments, and by the end of the session, identify more informative and graded assessments to use within our unit design planning. More informative assessments should include many key elements that are detailed on this slide. While the infographic refers to project-based learning, or PBL, the elements listed apply to most project types and more informative assessments. You first pose an open-ended problem or question that is at the appropriate challenge level for your students. It needs to be an engaging, driving question that requires sustained inquiry, an in-depth process where students generate questions, find and use resources, ask further questions, and develop their own answers. The problem or question should be authentic with real-world context that allows students to use real-world processes, tools, and quality standards. It must make a real impact and/or be connected to students' own concerns, interests, and identities. The products students create and how they work should allow for student voice and choice, guided by you, the teacher. The process should also develop to include students' opportunities to reflect on what and how they are learning and on the project's design and implementation. You should build in time for students to give and receive feedback on their work in order to revise their ideas and products or conduct further inquiry. When possible, you should give students the opportunity to demonstrate what they have learned by creating a product that is presented or offered to people beyond the classroom. We will provide some project and project-based learning examples a little later in this training. While the last slide detailed elements of projects and project-based learning, this slide shows elements of a quality performance assessment or performance task, which is a multi-step fair task that asks students to apply their learning to new context and create original products and or solutions. Performance assessments should align to the learning target, outline clear criteria for success, be open-ended, and have real-world relevance, require application and transfer of learning, be fair and culturally responsive, and result in original products or solutions. Before we dive into specific examples of more informative assessments and ways to structure them, we wanted to draw attention to some valuable district resources that can provide further support when developing more informative assessments. On the Deeper Learning website, which is linked at the bottom of this slide, they have information including articles, videos, and tools to use related to many types of more informative assessments, such as performance assessments that we just talked about, project-based learning, which we also talked about, passion projects, and many personalized learning options. They also are integral to the Backpack of Success skills and support for student backpack artifacts. We've included 2 infographics on this slide used by Deeper Learning Department related to the Backpack of Success skills. We all know that the backpack was developed to ensure JCPS students receive an education in which academic achievement and personal development go hand in hand in order to empower students with the tools they need to be successful students, professionals, and citizens of the world. Many of the more informative assessments that we discuss in this training would be ones that students could include in their backpack if they choose to. Let's take a moment to connect the material thus far. When developing more informative assessments that evaluate student learning and provide you with data, utilize the elements listed here and in the previous slides to craft assessments which can lead to backpack artifacts that support the Backpack of Success skills. This slide provides examples of various performance assessments and projects that can be assigned to students, including delivering a speech or panel discussion, giving a demonstration, creating a board game, to name just a few. When students perform tasks that are meaningful and engaging to them, they are able to take ownership of their learning and effectively work either independently or in collaboration with other students. There are many written types of assessments included on this slide. You could have students write a news article, develop a TV show, or create a brochure. It is important to provide a variety of assessments to allow for student choice, voice, and agency, and to appeal to multiple learning styles. A list of tech-based assessments are on this slide, such as creating podcasts, video documentaries, or websites. Research supports the need for students to be able to demonstrate complex knowledge, skills, and abilities using technology-based assessments.
Choice boards can be used as an option to assess mastery of content. They can incorporate a variety of assessment examples that we shared on the previous 3 slides. For example, you could let students choose between several options to demonstrate mastery of standards in a unit of study, such as a TED Talk, create a movie, build a model, create a poster, design an informative slideshow, or write a children's book. Choice boards increase student ownership in how to demonstrate learning and allows them to be more responsible, accountable, and independent in their learning. At the bottom of the slide, There are example choice board options linked. Some will work for more informative assessments. Others might be better used for introducing content or for student practice. You can take what is here and make it your own to fit your instructional needs. With any more informative assessment, it is important to monitor progress to identify where students are in their learning, determine how to best use instructional time to support learning, and provide feedback on a regular, ongoing basis throughout the process. Monitoring progress also helps students to reflect on where they are in relation to their learning goals and identify needed actions they can take to meet their goals. We are going to watch a video about the importance of assessing and having small check-ins periodically.
Different than a traditional classroom, PBL is going to integrate assessment throughout the project. Because these projects are multi-week projects, you need to keep on top of students and build in opportunities to assess where they are and what they're learning as you go along.
From the minute a teacher introduces that learning target for the lesson or engages in strategic observation, we feel that the assessment process is in play.
It's not a test at the end of the week or the end of a unit. You're doing a lot of small check-ins with the students to see where they're at and to see that they're growing along. So some examples of formative assessments that I use in my classroom is FIST to 5. So 5 is I feel really good about this learning target. I'm learning what I need to in class today. A 0 is I have nothing.
You really have to know what kids know and don't know. That can often determine what next steps need to be put into place in order to support or differentiate the learning for the kids in their classroom.
You saw another form of assessment, which we call a quick check, or a checking for understanding, and that's sort of the thumbs up, I get it, sideways, I'm not quite sure, or thumbs down, no, I don't get it. And that's for them to reflect, but it's also for us to do a check for their understanding.
It's just sharing some of the responsibilities for assessment with those who are most involved with the project. So you give students the opportunity to assess themselves. You give them the opportunity to assess their teammates.
We find that some of the most important and useful feedback is when kids can offer it to each other.
So typically in a PBL unit, the culminating event is what all the students and the teacher are working toward. So usually this involves inviting community members or inviting other teachers, inviting parents to the classroom, or maybe you even do it in the evening and you present what the students have learned, whether it's the final product, something that they created, whether it's a solution to a problem facing the community. So it's usually a big deal, and the teachers should take advantage of that being a big deal because the students are very proud to present what they've learned. It really becomes an event where students are showcasing all that they've learned through this big project and their plans for how they're going to pursue it further.
While the video was about PBLs, it applies to any type of more informative assessment. It is not enough to just give more informative assessment to students and then have them turn it in when completed. You need to provide structure for both you and your students to stay on track, with multiple opportunities for feedback and revisions in order for students to be successful. In the next few slides, we will offer some suggestions for how to structure more informative assessments, specifically a long-term unit project. The steps introduced here can be modified to fit other informative assessments. Within some of the steps, there are some suggestions in the berry color on the slide that can be used for progress monitoring, self-assessment, and reflection. The ones underlined are hyperlinked to templates or resources. In the beginning of your more informative assessment, you will want to provide students with a rubric or a checklist. It is important to invite students to help co-construct the assessment criteria for the rubric to get them to think more deeply about their work and what quality work looks like. After creating or co-creating the rubric and kicking off the assignment, have students begin to brainstorm questions or ideas and conduct initial research. This will help with facilitating conversation, clarification, and reflection. As teams develop a vision and plan for their work, you want to get them to develop and work through their SMART goals, support their thinking process, and share ideas with their peers. As mentioned on the previous slide, you can access supporting resources and templates by clicking on the underlined words on the slide. During project work, it is important to continue to check for understanding, and students can self-assess to give them ownership of their own learning. It is also important to do periodic check-ins with groups or individuals related to project goals and deadlines. You could have students keep a project log with daily updates of what they've learned, what they've accomplished, and what they plan to do next. Also, throughout the project work, not just for the final project presentation, it's important to give students and student groups opportunities to provide peer feedback. Finally, it is very important to have students reflect and share how their knowledge, skills, and learning progressed over the course of the more informative assessment. You, as the teacher, should use those student reflections as well as your own reflections on the process to adjust your content and process moving forward. Here are several planning tools, rubrics, and checklists that can be used for informative assessments. The examples can be adapted to fit the needs of your instruction. Take a moment to pause the video and reflect on ways you plan to incorporate a variety of informative assessments in your lessons. In any classroom, the teacher should be aware of certain considerations regarding the environment or learning community that they are helping to create. Knowing the backgrounds or cultural norms for students within the classroom will lead to more engaging and effective instructional practice. You will want to use multiple approaches and options within your instruction to reach all types of learners and use meaningful and frequent assessments, including a variety of more informative and graded assessments that we have discussed today. In classrooms where ECE students are present, it is helpful to use the Principles of Universal Design for Learning, UDL, when planning instructions to identify barriers that may prevent a student from demonstrating understanding. Be sure to collect formative assessment data frequently and at varied intervals to inform instruction. Questions throughout the lesson to understand student processing and provide explicit and specific feedback. Utilize some of the supports and structures we have provided earlier in this training. When considering deeper learning, use a variety of assessment modes, including self-assessment, and include focus on critical thinking and problem solving. This slide includes references and resources. Some are hyperlinked with additional information about and examples of more informative assessments. Thank you for joining us to learn more about more informative and graded assessment. For more information about the MTSS toolkits and other high yield practices, visit our website.